Dear students, welcome back for today's session. So, we are going to solve the solutions for the test given on the chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. Dear students, we have the first question here as follows. Science of cultivation, breeding, marketing and arrangement of flowers is called. Four options have been given. Let us understand each one of this. Okay. So first we have arboriculture. Dear students, see, let me tell you that arboriculture is the cultivation of trees, alright, and shrubs, my dear friends. Next, alright, so it cannot be the cultivation, breeding, marketing and arrangement of flowers. It is cultivation of trees and shrubs. Next we have floriculture. Yes, indeed, floriculture is the actual option, alright, which is the cultivation, breeding of different varieties of plants to have various flowers, as well as their marketing and arrangement, alright, all that is included in a branch called floriculture. Then we have horticulture, dear friends. See, horticulture, alright, I can say that it is the science and art of development, alright. See, my dear friends, it is the sustainable, alright, production, marketing of high value, alright, the first point, high value, intensively cultivated, alright, intensively cultivated, okay, food and ornamental plants. Alright, here basically we are looking into two important aspects. The first one is the food and the second one is the ornamental plants. Alright, remember this, my dear friends. Okay, these two important aspects the horticulture deals with. Then we have anthology. Alright, anthology is a collection of flowers. It's a collection of flowers. So, I have already explained you all the four options. So, the right option here is that of floriculture. So, please go for it. The next question we have, non-essential floral organs in a flower are. Four options have been given: sepals and petals, anther and ovary, stigma and filament, petals only. See, it's quite seems to be a easy question. See, a flower has essential and non-essential whorls. The essential whorls of the flower are, right, the stamens rather, or androecium, what we call, alright, and then we have carpels. All the carpels together is called as gynoecium, alright, or pistil, dear friends. So anyway, so these are the essential whorls of the flower. Why do we refer it to as essential? Because these stamens or androecium and carpels or gynoecium are involved in the process of reproduction, right, of a plant. So that's why they are called essential whorls. Non-essential whorls, dear friends, alright, are the calyx and corolla. Calyx, or you can also refer it to as what? The sepals, and the calyx is also called as the corolla is also called as the petals. So these are non-essential whorls of the flower, my dear friends. So they are not involved in the reproduction. During the reproduction process, they are important for protection, support, alright, for the reproductive process to occur without any disturbances of environment, alright. So fine. So in the given option, non-essential, floral organs in a flower are is the question. So the direct answer is what? The sepals and the petals, alright, or we can say it as what? Calyx and corolla. See, anther and ovary are the reproductive parts. We cannot go by that option. Stigma is the reproductive part. Filament is also the reproductive part. They have given the last option as only petals. So all those three cannot be. Alright, petals and sepals together are non-essential floral organs in a flower. So you have to go for option number A. That is your right answer. Dear students, the next question we have here is, the stamens represent microsporangia, male gametophyte, male gametes and microsporophylls. Alright, here let me tell you firstly that there are various important terms we need to understand. Firstly, let us understand what do we mean by microsporangia. Alright, sporangia is the structure, alright, we can say which contains the microspores. So rather, for microsporangia we can refer it to as what? The sporangium containing spores. Alright, the sporangium which has microspores, or microspores can also be referred to as the pollen grains. Microspores in other way we can say it as what, dear friends? Pollen grains. Alright, so anyway, so here let us also understand the other options. See, the other option given here is male gametophyte. Alright, the mature, rather I can say the mature male gametophyte, the first male gametophyte is the pollen grain, my dear friends. Alright, the pollen grain. So again, that of course cannot be the option. The stamens represent what they are also called as, we need to understand that. See, the third option given here is what, dear friends? Male gametes. Alright, see, male gametes are of course the stamens are the male reproductive parts, but they are not male gametes. Alright, so they are not the male sex cells, rather, in simple sense. Alright, now we have few important aspects which we need to understand. See, there are the scientific terms which are used to define the important structures. Let me tell you. See, if you are talking about the ovule can also be referred to as megasporangium. Alright, then secondly, let me talk about microsporangium, so which is nothing but the pollen sacs. Pollen sacs are also called as microsporangium, dear friends. Alright, microsporangium. Then, dear friends, we also have the microsporangin. Microsporangin is nothing but the microsporangin can also be called to as the sporogenous tissue, dear friends. Alright, in the similar manner we call, alright, the megasporophyll as carpel. See, carpel is the unit of pistil. One stigma, style and ovary. See, one stigma, one style, alright, and one ovary together, we call it as carpels. If many carpels are there in a flower, all the carpels together we call it as gynoecium or pistil. Remember that. Then, dear friends, the carpel can be scientifically called to as megasporophyll. Megasporophyll. Then, my dear friends, as I already told you, microspores means to say pollen grains. And now comes the important point when you are talking about stamens. Alright, see, the stamens are the male reproductive structures. Alright, see, generally when you consider the stamens, there will be a connective tissue at the center, and these are the anther lobes. Alright, there is a filament which is a slender stalk. Alright, very short stalk. Alright, and there is at the center connective tissue. Alright, or we generally call it as connective. So anyway, so this complete structure is called as the stamen, or it can also be referred to as microsporophyll, my dear friends. Alright, so I hope now it is very clear to you. Alright, dear friends, now let us move on to the next question. We have question number 4 here. So the question number 4 as follows: anther is generally monosporangiate, bisporangiate, tetrasporangiate and trisporangiate are the 4 options. Now let me tell you that when you are talking about the anther, it's a part of the stamen, alright, which are represented earlier in the earlier question. See, generally the anther is tetrasporangiate. So that means to say that Anther is dithecous. Alright, generally. So dithecous means we can say for example, this is the anther if you are considering. Alright, see here we have the pollen sacs, and inside this we have many pollen grains or the microspores. Alright, my friends. Now, alright, see we can find, alright, 4 pollen sacs, alright, and the dithecous condition it is. Alright, so anther is generally having 4 pollen sacs, that's why it is generally referred to as what? Tetrasporangiate. Alright, remember that, my dear friends. So go for option number C. Then, dear friends, next question we have, the anther wall consists of 4 wall layers where tapetum lies just inner to endothecium. Okay, here this is the first option, then middle layers lie between endothecium and tapetum is the second option, followed by endothecium lies inner to middle layers and tapetum lies next to epidermis. These 4 options are there, my dear friends. Let me make you understand this. Okay, see, it's very clear that we need to go by the structure of anther here. Alright, see, these are 4 pollen sacs. Alright, see, dear friends, there are, of course, see, there is outer layer. Alright, this outer layer is called as epidermis. Alright, then the inside the epidermis we can find a flexible structure called as endothecium. Alright, friends, then inside the endothecium we can find, alright, 3 middle layers. Alright, so we can find middle layers. So inside that we can find, alright, the tapetum, which is a multinucleated structure. Because why we call tapetum as multinucleated structure? Because here, in case of, see, for example, pollen sacs, I will just enlarge and show you. See, tapetum will be like this. Alright, so inside many nucleus will be there instead of one nucleus. Alright, the reason is, here in case of tapetum, the karyokinesis is not followed by cytokinesis. That means to say that the division of the nucleus is not followed by the division of cytoplasm. Alright, fine, dear friends. Here let us now understand that the first option here is tapetum lies just inner to endothecium. See, after endothecium we can find, dear friends, the middle layers, not the tapetum. Alright, so first option is the wrong option. Secondly, let us understand that middle layers lie between endothecium and tapetum. Yes, alright. Say we have middle layers, alright, which are lying between the endothecium. Endothecium is the second layer. See, so endothecium is the second layer after epidermis. So the third layer is tapetum. Alright, the middle layer, and followed by the tapetum, which is fourth. Alright, so going by order, see, between the endothecium and the tapetum we can find middle layers, which is the correct option. So option 2 is the right answer here. So let us also understand the option C, what they have given. Endothecium lies inner to middle layers. Alright, so it is not inner, it is outer. Alright, say, dear friends, here let me show the diagram again. See, if this is the anther. Alright, see, this is epidermis. Alright, and this is endothecium, right, friends. So followed by endothecium we have middle layers. Alright, middle layers, then we have the tapetum. Alright, so this, okay, tapetum. Now, dear friends, let me tell you in order you move. Let us say firstly we have epidermis, then endothecium, then middle layers, then we have the tapetum. Alright, children. So now endothecium lies inner to middle layers is a question. Inner, it is not inner. See, as the endothecium is in fact outer. First itself, the endothecium is a second layer which is followed by the middle layers. It is not follow after the middle layers. Correct? So anyway, so third option is also wrong. then tapetum lies next to epidermis. No, it is absolutely wrong statement, because tapetum can be seen after the middle layers. All right, it is after epidermis we can find the endothecium, my dear friends. So anyway, so the right answer here we have to go for is the option 2, that is middle layers lie between endothecium and tapetum. Dear friends, the next question we have here is Calais enzyme, all right, which dissolves callose of pollen tetrads to separate 4 pollens is provided by. See, after the process of formation of the pollen grains, what we call it as microsporogenesis, all right, of course there will be, all right, in we can say 4 pollen tetrads will be present, all right. So rather we can say 4 pollen grains will be present, all right, together. So those pollen grains in fact needs to be separated, all right. So for which we need all right, the Calais enzyme, all right, my friends. So let me tell you that this Calais enzyme is secreted by the tapetum, dear friends, all right, which is also a nutritive tissue which is important for the providing nutrition for the developing pollen grains, all right. So that is the important role of the tapetum. Other than that, indeed this tapetum also, all right, helps in the secretion of Calais enzyme necessary for dissolving callose to separate 4 pollen grains, all right, pollen grains which were together after their formation from meiosis. Anyway, dear friends, here let me tell you that tapetum secretes these, in fact we call these certain bodies are present called as Ubish bodies, all right. See, Ubish bodies, these Ubish bodies are in fact covered with sporopollenin, my dear friends. Sporopollenin is a resistant chemical which can be seen in the exine of pollen grains. So these Ubish bodies, all right, which are covered by sporopollenin, in fact, and definitely this in fact they increase the thickness of the exine, the presence of the sporopollenin, and provides the resistance against acids, and environmental stress, heat, and so on. Dear friends, so the right answer here is what? That is of tapetum. So it is important for dissolving callose of pollen tetrads. Then 7th question we have, dear friends, here, which function of tapetum is correct? See, again let me tell you, we are talking about the nutritive tissue called the tapetum. 4 options have been given. Helps in pollen wall formation, transportation of nutrients to the inner side of anther, synthesis of Calais enzyme for the separation of microspore tetrads. All of this. See, dear friends, of course the tapetum, as I said you in the previous question itself, that it is important for the synthesis of Calais enzyme for separation of pollen tetrads or microspore tetrads. Okay, that we know now. And also it is important as the nutritive tissue, right? So it is important also for transportation of nutrients to the anther. Other than that, it also helps in the pollen wall formation. All right, children, all right, I have told you that tapetum, all right, secretes Ubish bodies which get covered with sporopollenin, and also it helps in the formation of pollen wall. So all these options are correct. These are all the important functions which are performed by the nutritive tissue called as the tapetum, which is the innermost tissue present in the anther. So go for option D, that is your right answer. Then, dear friends, we have the study of pollen grains is called. All right, let us understand the each option here. See, first option given is what? The micrology. All right, micrology deals with the study of microscopic objects. All right, study of what? The microscopic objects, my dear friends. All right, or rather I can say it deals with the study of microscopic observation. Anthology, already I have told you, it's collection of flowers. All right, it's a collection of flowers. Then we have palynology, yes, the study of pollen grains. All right, in every manner is called as what? The palynology, and the scientists, all right, and the people involved in the study of pollen grains are called as palynologists. All right, remember that. So option C is the correct one. Anyway, the next option is pomology. So science of growing fruits and nuts is called as pomology, or in simple sense, if you want to say, the study of the fruits is called as pomology. So among the given options, the right answer is option C. Dear friends, the next question we have here is, how many pollen mother cells should undergo meiotic division or meiosis to produce 64 pollen grains? First of all, let me tell you that whenever the pollen mother cells undergo the meiosis, alright, they form the pollen grains, alright. That process is called as microsporogenesis, dear friends, alright. Okay, so this is one important aspect. Now let me come to the question. See here, each pollen mother cell, that is what we call in short as PMC, alright, whenever it undergoes meiosis, right dear friends, so there is formation of 4 pollen grains, alright, so which are haploid, alright. There is formation of 4, alright, haploid pollen grains, alright friends. So now see, it's very simple to say that meiosis, whenever meiosis occurs, there is formation of 4 haploid pollen grains, right? So in that sense, if we consider, see, you can just multiply it by 16 times, alright? So 16 pollen mother cells, if they undergo meiosis, how many it will be? 4 6 are 24, 2 carry, 4 on the 4 plus 2, 6, 64, alright? Totally, I can say 64 pollen grains for the formation. It requires how many pollen mother cells? 16, alright? So the right answer is what? Option C. So please go for that. So the next question we have here is, which of the following statements about sporopollenin is incorrect? See, we have to identify among the given 4 statements the wrong statement, my dear friends, alright. So the first option here is, exine is made up of sporopollenin. Yes, let me tell you that whenever we talk about the structure of, alright, the pollen grains, let me tell you that the pollen grain, the outer layer is called as the exine, which is of course made up of sporopollenin. Due to this sporopollenin, alright, the pollen grains gets resistance against the environmental stress, the heat, the acids and other chemicals. And the inner layer is called as the intine, which is pectocellulosic in nature. So it is made up of pectin and cellulose, alright dear friends. So inside the intine we can find 2 cells, that is the generative cell and the vegetative cell. Okay, let me come that we talk about that later. So here the first option is correct. Anyway, second, let us move. Sporopollenin is one of the resistant organic materials. As I said you, yes indeed, sporopollenin is resistant organic material. Because of that only it is resistant against environmental stress. Then dear friends, option C we have here is, exine has apertures called germ pores where sporopollenin is present. They are saying yes indeed. See, whenever we talk about the pollen grain structure, alright, exine, in the exine we have the germ pores. That's absolutely correct, my dear friends, alright, that's absolutely correct. But here in this region, in the germ pores, alright, in the germ pores, we don't find the sporopollen. It is not present. It is in fact absent in the germ pores. So the given option C is wrong. Anyway, let us understand the fourth option. Sporopollenin can withstand high temperatures and strong acids. Yes, that's also the correct statement. So please go for option C. That is the incorrect one. Alright. So next question we have here is, dash of the pollen grain divides to form 2 male gametes. As I said you, my dear friends, see, whenever we talk about the the structure of pollen grain, there are 2 cells, alright. There is one generative cell and one vegetative. See, this is the vegetative cell and this is the generative cell. So here let me tell you very clearly that the microgametogenesis, all right, helps in the formation of male gametophyte, all right, or the pollen grain rather, all right. So pollen grain is the first cell of male gametophyte, all right. So now let me tell you, pollen grain undergoes two divisions, dear friends, all right. Let me be very clear with it. See, pollen grains undergoes two divisions, all right. The first division, when it undergoes, all right, two cells are formed, that is the vegetative cell and the generative cell in the first division. And the second division, when it undergoes, all right, then here vegetative cell is not involved. Vegetative cell just plays a role of providing nutrition, whereas only the generative cell will undergo the division. So when generative cell undergoes division, it rather, all right, helps in the formation of the two male gametes, all right. So let me tell you that further, as we all know that during double fertilization especially, these two male gametes will enter into the embryo sac and fuse with the egg and secondary nucleus, all right, to form the zygote and primary endosperm nucleus respectively. So here the right answer we have to go for, my dear friends, is that of B. Next question we have here is megasporangium, all right, along with its protective integuments is called, all right. Whenever we are talking about the megasporangium, let me tell you that megasporangium is also called as what, my dear friends? The ovule, all right. See, this is the embryo sac, all right, embryo sac, all right, and this is covered by the integuments, all right, my dear friends. Integuments are present, and inside this we have antipodal cells, all right, then we have secondary nucleus, then we have the synergids and egg, all right, inside the embryo sac. Fine. So then the embryo sac is covered by the parenchymatous tissue called as the nucellus, all right, that also we know. And the stalk of the, all right, the ovule is called as the funicle or funiculus, all right. The basal part of the ovule is called as the chalaza, right, my friends? Okay, so like this, the point of attachment is called as raphe, to where where the ovule is attached to the ovary, all right. And of course many important points are there. Opening is called as the micropyle through which the pollen tube enters. Okay, so of course these points are there, but let me tell you, the protective integuments along the megasporangium, along with that we generally refer it to as what? The ovule, all right. So the option B is the correct one, my dear friends. Next question we have here is mature ovules are classified on the basis of funiculus, all right, mature ovules. So if micropyle comes close to lie to the funiculus, the ovule is termed as. Now 4 different types of ovules have been given. Let us understand each one of it, and let us know that, all right, if micropyle comes to lie close to funiculus, very close to funiculus, the stalk of the ovule, if if the micropyle is present near that, then what that type of ovule is called as, we will understand. See, I had drawn the structure just before now. See, if you are talking about this anatropous ovule or inverted ovule, see, this is the funicle, my dear friends. Just near the funicle, see, you can find the opening. See, this is the opening called micropyle. So this is the answer is very straightforward here, all right, because near the funicle the micropyle is present in the anatropous ovule. Very clearly it can be seen here. So the right answer is anatropous only. Okay, dear friends, the other types of ovules have also been mentioned there. The first one is orthotropous. See, let me just draw the rough structure of orthotropous ovule, my dear friends. Okay, see, it will be as such, all right. So here this is the embryo sac, all right, my dear friends. So this is embryo sac, these are integuments, all right. Okay, so fine. So what you can find here is that the chalaza, the basal part of the ovule, the chalaza and the funicle, the stalk of the ovule, this is the stalk of the ovule and the chalaza here, all right, they lie in a straight line as in the case of pepper, all right. So that is what we call orthotropous ovule, all right. Then we have the next type, we call it to as the hemitropous or hemianatropous ovule. See, it's again the type of ovule which we can see as such. All right, see, it's very clear that it will be as such. Okay, so you can find the embryo sac here. All right, so this is how the structure looks like, my dear friends. All right, I can say that the body of ovule is bent to 90 degree, friends. Okay, if the body of the ovule is bent to 90 degree, that type of ovule is called as hemianatropous ovule. Example we can take as ranunculus. All right, in this plant we can find this type of ovule. Then, dear friends, we also have one more example here, that is the campylotropous. Campylotropous means the body is curved. All right, say like this. All right, say something like this. All right, and the embryo will be present here. All right, see, the body of the ovule is very much curved, my dear friends. All right, so please try to understand this. Okay, so this type of ovule is called as what? Campylotropous ovule. The example is in many different plants of leguminosae we can find the, all right, campylotropous ovule, bent body of the ovule. Fine. So the right answer here is, as I said, as I explained earlier, the right answer is anatropous. That is, micropyle is very closely present near, or present very much near to the funiculus. Next question we have here is, the filiform apparatus is present in. First of all, let me tell you what filiform apparatus is, my dear friends. All right, see, this filiform apparatus is the special cellular thickening. All right, it is a special cellular thickening, all right, which is present at the tip of the filiform apparatus. All right, say, all right, so that we need to understand. Fine, the filiform apparatus, now we know that special cellular thickening at the micropylar tip. See, if this is the embryo sac and these are the integuments, all right, so this is the micropyle. All right, so immediately we can find inside the embryo the synergids. Just attached to the synergids we can find this filiform apparatus. All right, my friends, the function of this filiform apparatus is, to guide the entry of pollen tube and release of sperm cells. All right, so fine, it guides the pollen tube towards the egg so that the sperm cells are properly or very clearly they fuse with the sperm cells. All right, okay, or sorry, the egg cells. All right, so the right answer here we have to go for is synergids, my dear friends. Next question we have here is, the female gametophyte, all right, female gametophyte of a typical dicot at the time of fertilization is, all right. See, again it's an interesting question. Let me tell you that in angiosperm, the female gametophyte, first of all, let me tell you, is referred to as the embryo sac, my dear friends. All right, so it is of course is an it's a rather, the structure is a haploid structure which is embedded in the nucellus. Inside the nucellus we can find this. All right, in the embryo sac we can find different various types of cells. All right, these are antipodal cells. All right, which are haploid. All the cells are haploid generally. Here secondary nucleus is present which is diploid. All right, and we have the synergids. Above the synergids we have the egg. All right, synergids and egg together are called as the egg apparatus. Dear friends, now let me tell you that here most importantly that a typical and most common type of embryo sac. All right, most of the cases, in 80% of flowering plants, what we find is 7 celled but 8 nucleated. Say, in the antipodal cells, here we can find 3 nucleus. In the secondary nucleus, 2 nucleus are fused. All right, so totally 5 nucleus, and then in the egg there is 1 nucleus, so 6 nucleus, and synergids 2 nucleus, so totally 8 nucleus will be present, but 7 cells and 3 antipodal cells. All right, one the secondary nucleus, 1 egg, and 2 synergids. All right, so totally 7 cells but 8 nucleated it is. All right, so the right answer here is, my dear friends, option B. So the next question we have here is male and female flowers, all right, present on different plants, what we call as dioecious, to ensure xenogamy in, all right. See, pollination, when we are talking, dear friends, pollination is of two types. One is geitonogamy, all right. Especially I'm talking first about the cross pollination. So in the cross pollination, let me tell you, there are two types. The first is geitonogamy and the second one is xenogamy, all right. These are the two types of cross pollination, all right. The geitonogamy is the the pollination which exists between, or the transfer of the pollen grains from one flower to the other flower of the same plant, all right. That is called geitonogamy. Xenogamy is what? The transfer of pollen grains from a particular flower of a particular plant to the another flower of another plant, all right. So actual type of cross pollination is xenogamy, all right. So of course we know about the self pollination, all right. That is, it is again having the cleistogamy and chasmogamy. So now as the question is here about the xenogamy, all right. So let me tell you, see, the male and female flowers of course are present on different plants, all right, to ensure xenogamy. One of the examples. So first of all, let me tell you here, to make you understand the question, is that the plants in which male and female flowers are born on separate individuals which are present, the male is separate and the female is separate. Say if the stamens are present in one particular flowers, say only stamens are present, that type of flowers is staminate flower. If only pistils are present in a particular flower, or pistil is present rather, or pistil means many carpels together, right? If pistil is present, then the flower is called as what? Pistillate flower, all right. So my dear friends, what I mean to say here is that dioecious here means to say that the sexes are separate. So in this type of, in fact, the plants, say for example we have papaya, we have date palm, all right, and many other examples which exhibit dioecious, which are dioecious and which exhibit xenogamy. It should be dioecious, all right, and should exhibit xenogamy. So that type of example here is papaya, my dear friends. So you have to go for option A. Next question we have here is, which of the following is not a water pollinated plant? Not a water pollinated plant, dear friends. So see, there are different agents of pollination. Either the pollination can occur through wind, called as anemophily, all right, or the pollination can occur by the means of water, called as hydrophily, all right, my friends, or the pollination can occur with the help of animals, called as zoophily, all right. Dear friends, of course there are different types of pollination. So here the question as here is, we have to identify among the four given, all right, plants, which one is not pollinated by water. See, Zostera is a marine plant which is pollinated by water. Vallisneria and Hydrilla are also pollinated by water, all right. The only plant here which is not pollinated by water is cannabis, my dear friends. So the right answer is option D. And let me tell you that when you are talking about cannabis, it is not pollinated by water, but it is pollinated by wind, all right. It shows anemophily. So the right answer here is option D, my dear friends. So here next question we have, choose the mismatched pair, all right. We need to identify which pair is wrongly matched, all right, or mismatched. Cannabis shows anemophily. Yes, see, anemophily is pollination by wind, my dear friends. So cannabis plant shows pollination by wind. That is correct statement, and that is not our answer. Next we have Zostera shows hydrophily. Yes, see, water pollination can be seen in Zostera or Zostera marina, what we generally refer it to as, all right. It's a marine plant, and of course this is also correct, and this is not our answer. Then the third option we have here is Salvia shows entomophily. Dear friends, let me tell you that entomophily means pollination by insects, all right. So yes, the Salvia plant shows pollination by insects. And the fourth option here given is Adansonia. shows ornithophilia. Ornithophilia is pollination by birds, but Adansonia the type of plants which shows pollination by bats, my dear friends. Adansonia shows pollination by the bats. The pollination by bats is called as Chiropterophily. Alright, Chiropterophily. Alright, not only, my dear friends, Adansonia, there are so many other plants like Durio, alright, Kigelia pinnata, alright, my dear friends. So all these of course show, alright, the pollination by bats, alright. So here the right answer should be the option D, which is mismatched. Next we have, dear friends, question number 19. Pollen kit is generally found in. Dear friends, it's a quite an interesting question here. Let me tell you and explain you this, that the pollen grains, when we are talking, my dear friend, the pollen grains, the first the male gametophytic cells, when you are talking, all right. So the pollen grains of insect pollinated flowers, I am talking only about here insect pollinated flowers, all right. It should be insect pollinated flowers, all right. So those type of pollen grains, especially in their exine we can find yellowish viscous sticky and oil layer called as pollen kit, all right. What is pollen kit? Pollen kit is yellowish, all right, firstly, then viscous, sticky, as well as oily, all right, the layer which can be seen, all right, generally with respect to the, as I said you, in insect pollinated pollen grains, all right, in insect pollinated flowers. So my friends, so see, this pollen kit is made up of lipids and carotenoids, all right, my friends. And this pollen kit is secreted by tapetum, all right, the nutritive tissue, the inner nutritive tissue of the anther. So this pollen kit is generally present in the entomophilous flowers. I just told you that it is generally the pollen kits are present in insect pollinated flowers. So the pollination by insects is called as entomophily, and the flowers which participate in this type of pollination are called as entomophilous flowers. So the right answer here is option B. Please go for it. Next question we have here is, flowering plants have developed certain outbreeding devices to discourage self-pollination and encourage cross-pollination, all right. So one of this is not an example of such outbreeding device, all right. Yes, of course, there are so many different types of plants which avoid self-pollination and go for only cross-pollination to have variations, to have to contribute for evolution, all right, to have various ways of genetic what I can say, the characters in them, all right. So dear friends, so for the same they will undergo the cross pollination, avoiding self pollination. So we need to identify which among these is not a outbreeding device, all right. See, first of all, let me tell you, dicliny also means to say unisexuality, all right. So of course this is a outbreeding device. So when the flowers are unisexual, so the only option left with them is what? They have to go for cross pollination. Dichogamy here refers to that of course two different types of dichogamy. One is protogyny and protandry. The maturation of gynoecium before andrecium is protogyny, and protandry means the maturation of the anther, all right, before the gynoecium, all right. So like this, dear friends, so when this happens, definitely there is more chances of, all right, the self pollination. Hercogamy means formation of hood on the surface. See, if this is the stigma, my dear friends, all right, there will be some hood formation on the surface. It will cover the surface so that even when pollen grains come and sits onto the flowers, they will not undergo pollination. So that's what, by avoiding self pollination, and rather the only option will be left here is cross pollination, so they undergo that. So cleistogamy, see, cleistogamy is not a outbreeding device. Cleistogamy is a part of the self pollination. So what happens in generally cleistogamy occurs in what I can say occurs very much late in flowering season. Alright my friends, in some plants. What are the examples of cleistogamous flowers? The flowers which are formed here are generally cleistogamous, we generally refer it to as. So there are different types. Now for example, cleistogamous flowers examples can be Commelina, alright, or you can also give example as balsam, alright, or even we have an example of oxalis, okay, then followed by viola. Alright, like this there are so many number of what I can say cleistogamous flowers. Alright, so that's what my dear friends, see, cleistogamy generally ensures self pollination only because the pollen grains will be generally come very close in contact with the stigma, affecting the self pollination. Alright, so anyway, so now dichogamy, halcogamy are not the options because they are outbreeding devices. Cleistogamy is not an outbreeding device, so we have to go for option D. That will be our right answer. The next question we have is, part of gynoecium which receives the pollen is called as. Alright, here again it's an interesting question here. Alright, so let me tell you that it should be the stigma. Alright, see, the part of the gynoecium means what here, or it can also be said to as pistil, or all the carpels. If it is the flower is multicarpellary, then all the carpels together is called as what? Pistil or gynoecium. Or if single carpel is present, that itself will be the pistil. Alright, so the part of the pistil which receives, alright, the pollen, it's a direct question, is called as what? We call that as what? Stigma. So that is the right answer. See, basically when we talk the stigma, then we have style, then we have the ovary. The stigma receives the pollen grains. Alright, so this is the stigma. Alright my dear friends, and this is the style, and this is the ovary. Inside the ovary we have ovules. Inside the ovules we find embryo sac. Inside the embryo sac we have female gametes, that is egg. Alright, fine. Anyway, what the answer here is option B. Please go for the same. Dear friends, the next question we have here is triple fusion. Triple fusion in Capsella bursa pastoris is fusion of male gamete with. Alright, see here, of course this is again what I can say interesting question here. Alright, let me tell you that triple fusion, when we are talking my dear friends, let me tell you that when we are talking about the double fertilization here. Alright, so in case of double fertilization, let me tell you that the two male gametes which are formed by the generative cell of the pollen grain. Alright, so what happens, those two, out of that first gamete, the male gamete will fuse with the egg and forms the zygote. Alright, and the second male gamete will fuse with the secondary nucleus of the embryo sac to form the primary endosperm nucleus. Alright, so zygote will undergo continuous mitotic divisions later to form the embryo, and primary endosperm nucleus undergoes mitotic divisions to form the endosperm, the nutritive tissue. Anyway dear friends, so in case of Capsella bursa pastoris, the fusion of male gamete is with the question as such. So here it's quite it seems to be a very easy answer. See, the second type. Alright, the second type, that is the second male gamete which fuses the secondary nucleus, that is what we call it as triple fusion. So let me explain you this. See dear friends, see, okay, so this is the stigma, this is style, and this is ovary. Alright, and inside that we have the ovule. Alright, so what happens whenever there is formation of the pollen tube, alright, the pollen grain travels through the same, alright, and it as it reaches, alright, the synergids, it will release two male gametes. So, see, there is one egg here, so first will fuse the egg to form the zygote, and there is at the center the secondary nucleus. When it fuses with the secondary nucleus, it forms the second male gamete. Alright, primary endosperm nucleus. Already secondary nucleus, the fusion of two nucleus, so it is diploid condition. Alright, and primary endosperm nucleus is again what I can say dear friend, when it is formed, what happens? The second male gamete is fusing, no? So that's haploid condition. So diploid plus haploid, it becomes a triploid condition. So that triploid, that's why it is called as what? Triple fusion. 3 nucleus fused together, all right? One nucleus of the male gamete, all right, second male gamete, and the in fact the 2 nucleus which are part of the secondary nucleus will fuse together to form, you know, primary endosperm nucleus, which becomes a, all right, triploid, which has in fact the triploid nucleus in it, 3n, all right. So here 3 nucleus are fusing, that's why it's generally called as what? Triple fusion, which generally, you know, can be seen in Capsella bursa pastoris. So the right answer here is option C. Please go for secondary nucleus. Then my dear friends, we have double fertilization was first discovered in 1898 in Fritillaria and Lilium. Yes, see, note the point that for the very first time it was discovered in 2 plants called as Fritillaria and Lilium by a scientist called as Navaschin. Alright, so option A is the correct answer here. So double fertilization, as I explained you, alright, is an important part of the angiospermic plants, where, you know, after the pollen grains are formed, the pollen grains inside them, they have vegetative cell and the generative cell. The generative cell rather further divides to form 2 male gametes. The first male gamete fuses with the egg, alright, which is present in the embryo sac to form the zygote, and the second male gamete will fuse with the secondary nucleus of the embryo sac to form the primary endosperm nucleus. This is what we call it as double fertilization, as 2 times the fertilization is occurring. That is why it is called as double fertilization, and it was discovered by a scientist called as Navaschin. So please go for option A, that is your right answer. Dear friends, the next question we have here is, identify the wrong statement regarding post fertilization development. See here again, it's interesting to note that the first option is what? The ovary wall develops into pericarp. Yes my dear friends, see here it is right. The ovary wall after fertilization is over, double fertilization is after it is completed, especially the sepals, petals and many other non-essential, which are the parts not required, will of course will wither off, but few of the important, you know, parts, that is the ovary wall, will develop into the fruit wall called as pericarp. So that is correct. We need to identify the wrong statement, right my friends? So the second statement, let us see. The outer integument of the ovule develops into tegmen. In fact, it does not develop into tegmen, it develops into testa. Alright, the outer integument develops into testa, that is the outer seed coat. The seed, when you consider, first it has testa, then it has tegmen. Alright, so tegmen is formed from the inner integument, not the outer integument. So option 2 is the wrong statement. Anyway, let us also understand the option C, that is the fusion nucleus, triple nucleus develops into endosperm. Yes, see, after the double fertilization is over, there is formation of zygote and the primary endosperm nucleus. So zygote will further undergo mitotic divisions to form the embryo, and primary endosperm nucleus will undergo mitotic divisions to form the endosperm, which is a nutritive tissue which we in fact consume as well in most cases. Dear friends, now the third statement is correct. Then we have the ovule develops into seed. Yes, how, you know, many, there are important aspects we need to understand, as for example Papaver somniferum, which has so many thousands of ovules, which will of course develop into so many thousands of seeds. Alright, there are many cases, for example mango, there is only one ovule, so which will develop into one seed. Like that, it differs. For watermelon has many, alright, ovules, so it will develop into many hundreds of seeds. Alright, like this. So but anyway my dear friends, remember that the outer integument forms the testa, the inner integument forms the tegmen after fertilization, and the ovary wall forms the pericarp. Alright my friends, then in fact there is micropyle, the opening in the ovule, which forms the, in fact, the pore in the seed. Alright, and of course, and the ovule will develop into seed. Like this, many post fertilization changes will occur. So but the option 2 which is given is wrong here, because the outer integument forms the testa, not the tegmen. So the last question for today's session, we have here is, select the correct statement regarding parthenocarpy. Dear friends, parthenocarpy means here carp we are talking. So we are talking about fruits. You know, what is parthenogenesis? All right, parthenogenesis is the formation of the organism without fertilization. Parthenogenesis we call. Parthenocarpy means the formation of fruit without fertilization. Remember this, my dear friends. All right. So with respect to this, we have to identify the correct statement. The first statement given here is what? Formation of fruits without fertilization. Yes, that is the definition of parthenocarpy. That's absolutely the correct statement. All right. Next we have, all right. Next we have development of seedless fruits, as in banana, grapes, navel orange, etc. Yes, that is also correct. Why? Because artificially also we can have parthenocarpy by spraying auxins, gibberellins. All right, we can develop the seedless fruits. All right, and of course naturally also seedless fruits can be, of course, from it is based on the secretion of hormones, so that the ovary directly develops into the the fruits. Anyway, my dear friends, the given second statement is also correct. Then the third statement given here is auxins and gibberellins are used to induce parthenocarpy. Yes, when we spray auxins and gibberellins to the plant, they, without fertilization, the ovary is directly stimulated by these auxins and gibberellins growth hormones to form the fruit. The fruit will be seedless fruit. All right, my friends. So many examples are there. Not only in case of banana and grapes. Of course, there are so many other fruits where we have brought about parthenocarpy. So given all three statements are here correct. So you have to go for option 4. That is all of these. So please continue watching the solutions in the upcoming classes as well.